Hi, this is Paul Dennett from Sydney, Australia. I'm here with Patrick Avenel.
Hi Paul, how you going?
Good, Patrick. Welcome everyone to episode 3 of Bat and Ball with Pat and Paul. This episode is all about Test cricket. For 138 years, Test cricket has been played, and the cliche is, for that entire time, its demise has been regarded as imminent. Well, with games being played in front of very empty stadia, and with the rise of T20 cricket, is now its greatest period of threat. We're going to discuss the 10 things that we think should be done in order to safeguard its future. And we'll go through some of the feedback and suggestions we've had from you on Twitter.
This week on Bat and Ball with Pat and Paul, we're looking at several issues that we've identified in cricket. We've got a rundown of 10 problems and solutions that we could implement that we think could improve the game. And the first one on the agenda is overrates. Paul, what are your thoughts on this problem?
Slow overrates infuriate me. I think they infuriate quite a few fans as well, but I think that the players don't care about them, and I don't think the officials care about them either. And I'm sick of players saying, well, maybe there was a bit of a problem with overrates during the day, but a lot of wickets fell and lots of runs were scored, so that was good value for money. If the overrate is slow, then it's still not going to be as enjoyable to watch as if the overrate was at the pace that it should be. There's nothing more boring than watching a very slow moving day's play with bowlers meandering back to their marks and with lots of fielding discussions occurring. I think that something needs to be done about it, and I think that it'd be quite easy to do something about it.
What's your idea for that?
Well, firstly, just have a zero tolerance. Say it's meant to be 90 overs at minimum, therefore, really, you should be bowling more like 98 overs or something on a day where no major interruptions occur. I think that, if you said to them, for every over you bowl above 90 in the 6 hours of play, we'll give you all $10,000 each, you'd suddenly find they bowl 105 overs in the day. I don't think it's a problem. I think that it's just a question of attitude. My solution would be simple. It's got to be done on a per session basis. You need to bowl 30 overs minimum per session, no excuses. And if you fail to get the 30 overs bowled in a session, I think penalty runs is the answer. For every over that you're short, 10 penalty runs.
I agree with you that it should be penalty runs. And I also like your idea of bringing it down to a session by session, because it does mean that you can more accurately punish a captain. If they're, in a day's play, captains come up with lots of excuses for why there were delays, most of which revolve around blaming the other team. And if you get it down to one session, it's much harder for them to do that. The second issue is something that came up in the first test between England and Pakistan in Abu Dhabi, and that was bad light. We were both watching this on TV in our homes, and I personally found it very frustrating. What were your thoughts?
Well, it was frustrating, but it was expected. And the answer to me, obviously, is use the pink ball. The pink ball is being trialled in a couple of months' time in Adelaide. There'll be some teething problems. There's been some talk about it not being ideal, but I'm sure they'll get it right. And it just needs to be right. There's 5 overs to go. Light is deemed to be too bad. We're switching to the pink ball. And that might cause a disadvantage to either side because maybe the pink ball will swing a little bit less than the existing one or whatever the case may be. But there are so many instances already in cricket where you're subject to the vagaries of conditions. You bat first on a pitch that's doing a bit, that's tough. It keeps the game moving, and Test cricket isn't in the position where it can thumb its nose at spectators in the way that it currently does. And as an aside, our previous topic of getting the overs bowled in a suitable time would also help. And in the case just that occurred in Abu Dhabi here, why were they starting the test match so late that the sunset was going to cause a problem? In an event where no one was watching anyway, you might as well start it an hour earlier and ensure that there's no possibility of the natural sunset interfering with the day's play.
I'm not sure I agree with you totally about the pink ball. I think that will upset a lot of the ball purists out there. But I agree with you 100% regarding the test in Abu Dhabi starting so late in the day. It was only 5:30 p.m. when it was called off for bad light. I just think the ICC should legislate that you cannot play Test cricket anywhere that gets dark at 5:30 p.m.
Well, the thing is, I was checking that at this time of the year, Abu Dhabi gets about 11.5 to 12 hours sun per day. So the sunrise is occurring at 6 a.m. or thereabouts. they could have easily just brought the test match forward an hour.
Number 3 on our agenda is the quality and condition of pitches around the world, test match pitches. You've got some very strong thoughts on this one.
Well, I think that the problem with this is that people get partisan about it, and they think that it's all about looking at it from your own nation's perspective and saying, well, the home country's entitled to do whatever they want. That's how you. That's what home ground advantage is. You get home ground advantage in Test cricket naturally anyway. Cricket pitches in Australia and South Africa are always going to be faster, yet faster and bouncier. In India, they're going to spin more. In New Zealand and England, they're going to move about more. That's a natural advantage that the home ground is going to confer on you. The accepted wisdom that the home team can then have the pitch doctored to suit themselves, that has to change. That's wrong. What it needs to happen is there needs to be an independent groundsperson whose job is to produce the best cricket wicket that the local condition, taking into account the local conditions. The thing that you need most in Test cricket is good, decent bounce. It doesn't have to be bounce like the whacker or the gabba, but it has to be bounce where the ball doesn't just die and make it too easy for batsmen to occupy the crease for long periods of time without threat and grind out an innings.
Your solution is to have an independent curator. Listener JJ wrote in saying, ICC needs stringent pitch rules, if not develop drop-in pitches and carry them around the world. Would you like to see that happen?
Well, I mean, it would be a better solution than what's happening at the moment. The other suggestion is that the away team gets to choose whether they bat first or bowl first, which could negate some of the influence of home pitches as well. But I would just think, have a metric, have a say, right, the minimum bounce before the match, that the ball has to bounce a certain amount when it's dropped. We can have a standardised system of measuring it. We can ensure that the curator is independent and does what he or she needs to do without the home board interfering. And then the ICC can say, actually, no, this pitch was substandard and penalties will accrue. Maybe that ground won't be able to be used in future, or some sort of monetary penalty, so that we give ourselves the best chance of seeing a test match where players can perform well with bat and ball and make it interesting to watch.
Problem number 4 that we've identified on the rundown is no balls. Paul, you've bent my ear a lot of the times over the last few years talking about your theories about no balls. What's the problem and how can we solve it?
After a wicket has occurred, looking back to see whether or not a bowler has overstepped the mark by a centimetre or two, there's negative entertainment value in that. The umpires are not calling no balls. They're saying, oh, that's a bit close, but we'll let it go. That's a bit close, but let it go. That's a bit close. Oh, that was a wicket. Better just check to make sure that's okay. That's a system that's now been almost designed to create frustration for the spectator. Obviously, you've got to blame the bowlers. I don't think it's hard at all to not bowl no balls. Michael Holding's a staunch advocate of that I think he barely bowled a no ball in his career. In order to fix the problem for the spectators, I think that the third umpire should be involved, and that the third umpire should be the one that monitors and within a few seconds of the ball being bowled, if it's a no ball, advise the umpire that's a no ball. That will get us back to where it used to be, that we get no balls that don't actually occur on wickets, and the bowler gets a bit of an idea that he's getting close to the line and that he's gone over the line. And hopefully we see very few situations where we do now, where we've got to wait for the batsman to walk off and then go through this interminable process of seeing whether they overstepped or not.
Problem number 5 that we came up with was changing the LBW law. This is one where I know we have a lot of disagreements. What are your thoughts? And then I'll tell you mine.
Well, I think that there's a lot of talk about the lack of balance between bat and ball at the moment, and the batsmen have it too easy. And I think that one thing that would improve cricket immeasurably would be to change the LBW law so that if you're hit outside the line of the off stump, but the ball was going on to hit the stumps, you're out regardless of whether or not you're playing a shot. And the advantage of this is, A, it stops a lot of confusion. So many cricket fans don't understand the LBW law because of this extra little winkle in it. B, it would make things so much easier for the umpire as well, that they no longer have to worry about impact. It's fair. There's no great reward that should accrue for a batsman simply being able to thrust his front leg outside the line of the off stump. I think it would be a far better game that batsman is hit just outside the line of the off stump. It's a ball that's cannoning back into middle stump. that's one that should be out and will slightly help bring the balance back in favour of the bowler.
I tend to disagree with you about that. I actually quite like the LBW law as it is. I do think that the batsman should gain the advantage if the impact is outside the off stump. Problem number 6 that we've identified in Test cricket at the moment is the relevance of some series that are being played at the moment between nations. At the moment, we've got England playing Pakistan in the UAE, we've got Sri Lanka versus the West Indies in Sri Lanka, and there's also India versus South Africa in India, which to my mind seems to be a little bit more important. Paul, none of these seem really to stack up to the value of an Ashes, though. How can we fix this problem?
Yeah, well, I don't think that the series themselves have inherently much less value. I just think that they're treated without any love. I know that the next Ashes is going to be in July and August of 2019 already, 4 years out. It's a series that is set in the calendar, and it's given all the respect that it can possibly be given. The recently concluded 2-match series between Australia and the West Indies in the West Indies is a perfect example of a worthless series. It's not worthless that Australia and the West Indies are playing Test cricket against each other, because that's been the Frank Worrell Trophy over the years has been one of the great series. But why bother? Why bother playing a 2-Test series that no one seemed to know about before it was on? It was played in front of 0 crowds on flat wickets to almost no interest whatsoever. If you're going to do that, don't do it at all.
So would you suggest just Australia tours West Indies only plays 1 days and 2020s?
No, I'd say that don't put the pressure on to have these series so regularly held. Australia went from 1984, where they played a series in the West Indies, until 1991. 7 long years without playing a series in the West Indies. The 84 and the 91 series were successful. The 91 series was very popular in Australia. So don't force the issue. If this was not the time to play a series against the West Indies, it would have been far better off to say, look, let's go to England, let's get ready for the Ashes. Sorry to the West Indies, we're not coming, but let's work out a time in the calendar in years ahead that makes sense. Have no more 2 Test match series. I just don't see the point of that at all, just to tick a box. Pick a time in the calendar, book it in, and then show it the love. Let's start from the basis of saying, if we're going to have this series, let's plan it with the due care and attention to make it the best spectacle that we possibly can. And if it turns out that no one turns up anyway, well, so be it, but we gave it our very best shot.
Yeah, the telltale sign for me is always when you see the school kids in their uniform in the ground. That's when I know that I wonder why I'm watching this international Test cricket. If the only people that will go to the game are kids with free tickets, it always makes me question my life decisions that I'm staying up watching the game. The next problem that we've identified, and it's linked to what we just talked about then, is crowds. Better crowds at Tests and 1 days, and how to attract more people to a game. How would we fix this problem?
Well, I'm going to pick an unusual example because it's the Sydney Cricket Ground, which gets excellent crowds. It's one of the most successful venues for Test cricket in the world, but I think the pricing and the matchday experience at the SCG is an absolute disgrace. And I say that as someone who loves the SCG. I go every year, and I'll always go every year because it's one of the great grounds in the world in any sport. And there's so much to love about the Sydney Cricket Ground. But I've just looked at the prices for this upcoming match that's going to be played between Australia and the West Indies.
You've actually got the pricing structure there for the upcoming summer. Do you want to just read them out so people know what sort of prices we're talking about?
Yeah, so it's if you're in the Australian Army or the West Indies Army or just the cheapest reserve seats as an adult, it's $51 to sit in the sun all day. Bronze tickets, $66, sitting in the sun all day as well, at square leg. Then the next level up, silver tickets, $102. And for that you can sit in the Brawongle or the Trumper concourse. Now, that means that you're going to get wet if it rains. You know, you've got to then go and huddle somewhere. Because the other thing with the Sydney Cricket Ground is you're not allowed to pass out. The next level up, we've got the gold level, $143. And even those, it's in the Trumper stand, but I couldn't be sure that I wouldn't be exposed to the sun for the whole day. Indeed, the only ticket that I could be sure that I'm going to get a proper experience is the Platinum, the $163, which will sit me in the Brawongle stand, where I'm seeing the game from square leg, which isn't ideal, or the best parts of the trumper stand. And this in a summer where Australia is playing the West Indies, where you may have heard recently Gary Sobers giving his thoughts on the West Indies team, actually brought him to tears. And here's what Gary Sobers had to say about the current West Indies side.
I don't think we have that kind of person in West Indies cricket anymore, who is quite prepared to play and to give it everything to their country. And that hurts. And until we can get people who are willing to play for West Indies in the right way, I think that we're going to be struggling for a long time.
So, a perfect opportunity for Cricket Australia to say, here's the time to maybe offer some discounted tickets, but no, it's off the charts that you've got to pay. The food is absolutely repugnant. I just think that there'd be a huge percentage of the Australian population and the Sydney population who would never go to a test match as a result of this.
This kind of price structure makes a stadium visit impossible for younger and socially disadvantaged fans. It destroys fan culture, which is the basis of football. In England, this development has already taken place. This is a Bayern Munich fan statement that they released last week about paying £64 to see Bayern Munich play Arsenal. That's an A-list game of Champions League football that they were complaining about. And I found that quite poignant because in Munich, they talk about not wanting their club and their sport to become a magnet only for socially well-off, middle-class people. And I guess that's the question that I would ask about cricket in Australia is, do we want the sport to just become an outlet for, admittedly, our very broad middle class, or do we want it to be a sport for all Australians? And I think that the price is absolutely disgraceful because elderly people, young people, and people that are in low socioeconomic groups cannot afford to go to the cricket anymore. And we're going to see a monoculture at the cricket, which I think is very unfortunate, and it's going to have a very poor effect going forward as more and more people are disadvantaged and disenfranchised from cricket. The next problem is TV coverage. And this was one thing that quite a few people wrote in when we put a call out on Twitter for responses, that in England, cricket is now only on pay TV. There are some highlights on free-to-air. In Australia, we still get all of the Australian matches on free-to-air TV, which I think is one of the reasons that cricket remains very popular in Australia. Paul, it's a tough one here because pay TV companies are the ones that are putting up all the money to host it, and free-to-air TV networks, which are struggling worldwide, are blanching at some of the funds that cricket organisers want. Do you see a happy compromise here?
Well, it's hard. I mean, with the England situation specifically, that people talk about the golden era and that how in 2005, the last time that it was on terrestrial TV, as they call it over there, on Channel 4 was wonderful. And then the following summer it went to Sky Sports only, and that's then made cricket inaccessible to large swathes of the population. The problem is, as you say, that I don't think there was any free-to-air television station that wanted to take it on. So the ECB probably thought, well, we might as well get the money if we can.
Yeah, I think it's a big issue, but I also think that it's symptomatic of something we're seeing more and more around the world, is that cricket is a pay TV product. Australia is almost the outlier here in that we have huge free-to-air support from Channel 9. My worry with cricket being shown more and more on pay TV and less on free-to-air around the world is that as the content delivery systems are disrupted more and more and we move to more internet delivery, people won't be absorbing cricket by osmosis as they used to. A lot of people tend to put the cricket on during summer while they do other things, absorbing an over here or a ball there rather than actually sitting down and watching it as you would a soccer or a rugby league or AFL game. If it moves into an internet delivery system, I'm not sure people will do the pro rata purchasing of cricket that could be offered in the near future. Say, if you pay Netflix or YouTube or Amazon $1 to watch a test or $1 to watch a game of one-day cricket, whether people will do that and then watch the whole thing. I think that price hurdle may be too much for them. The ninth issue that we've identified that needs solving is the ongoing controversy regarding the division review system, the DRS. Paul, at the moment we've got a situation where DRS is being used in a lot of tests, but not all tests, in a lot of one-dayers, but not all one-dayers, and there's some controversy regarding what the DRS can adjudicate on and what they can't adjudicate on, and a lot of confusion about some of the the umpire's call situations that happen in LBW, first of all, I want to know, should we have DRS in every single match that's played?
Yeah, of course we should. The ICC should pay for the best equipment to be used, and it's far better than just having the umpire making the decision. Hawkeye, I think, is near enough to infallible. It improves player behaviour. If you want to appeal vociferously for a leg before and then it gets given not out and you can look all angry, well, with DRS, you put your money where your mouth is. And if you choose not to review the decision, you can't very well continue to behave badly because it's just you look like a hypocrite. So it improves player behaviour. It's stunningly entertaining. I'm sure that anyone who's watching cricket and only half keeping an eye on it, as soon as it goes to the DRS, it suddenly becomes much more interesting cricket. And I think that would be the way it should go. And the BCCI shouldn't be allowed to opt out. The ICC wanted it to be that DRS should be used in all series, even if the BCCI think that's wrong. Just because they're the most powerful board, the governing body of the sport should have the final say, and that's what should happen.
At the moment, a bowler runs in, bowls a lovely delivery, hits the guy on the pad, there's a huge appeal, the batsman gives it not out. If they go to the DRS and its umpire's called not out stands, if the umpire had given it out and the batsman had gone for DRS and it was umpire's call, he'd then be out. It's a bit of a game theory with the DRS. Do you have a solution for umpire's call?
The thing that frustrates me is that in order for a red light in LBW, if you can imagine the ball hitting leg stump, the middle of the ball has to be hitting the centre of leg stump. That's a very onerous set of conditions, and you can have, if the middle of the ball is 1 millimetre to the right of the middle of leg stump, the ball could in effect be knocking leg stump out of the ground, but it will be given the orange light. That's far too much protection. At the very least, with umpire's call, I would change it so that the ball just has to be hitting the middle of leg stump. Any part of the ball has to be hitting the middle of the stump. Then I think you'd find that the number of situations where the ambiguity of umpire's call occurred would be reduced, and there'd be much more of a chance of technology actually making the decision. I'd go a step further and just say, right, if Hawkeye says it's hitting the stumps, you're out. If Hawkeye says that one fraction of the ball pitched in line, you're out. That makes it much more definitive, would result in more LBWs, which is again better for the balance between bat and ball.
I actually quite like the game theory with the current umpire's call. I think it adds an extra layer of strategy to the game about when you should and shouldn't review decisions from the umpire. If you're the batsman, you should only review an LBW if you know you've hit it, or if you're in the fielding side, you should only review it if you're absolutely certain that the batsman's out. I quite like that, but people would say that cricket's about scoring runs to take wickets. It's not about manipulating game theory.
The 10th issue we've got to talk about is integrity issues in the game. And it's something that comes up quite a bit now in cricket regarding spot and match fixing, and there's a trial in London with Chris Cairns at the moment. How can we solve this problem?
I think that cricket needs to take the approach that inevitably it is going to occur from time to time, so let's do as much as we can to prevent it from occurring. Let's make sure that we try to lobby the various governments to make it a criminal offence. We have stringent penalties, we have stringent lots of education to the players, and I would take it a step further. I'd say we should actively employ a few fake bookmakers to go out there and try and entrap a few players and say to the players, just to let you know, if a bookmaker approaches you and says, hey, listen, we're doing a little bit of spot fixing here, you're going to make some easy money, then you've got to understand there's every chance that bookmaker will be working for us, and then we will throw the book at you.
Yeah, it's very much carrot and stick. I think that it's got to be two-pronged. You've got to make sure that the players playing in games that have the potential to be match fixed or spot fixed are being paid a salary that is high enough that they are not interested in taking money from outside those realms. But you also have to have the stick, and I think the only stick that works is life bans. I think that once you're in any way convicted of a match fixing or spot fixing offence, it has to be a life ban.
During the week, I sent out a tweet asking for people's feedback on how they would fix Test cricket. And we got lots of replies with some very constructive ideas on how people would improve Test cricket. Patrick, you want to take us through a few of the suggestions that our listeners had?
Yeah, Paul, the most common response was one that I wasn't expecting, and it's not something that I've actually ever thought about, and that's forcing results in Test cricket. Kapil Agarwal, Justin Flynn, the Time Traveller, Arpit Raha, Adarsh Gautam, they all wrote in with variations on a theme, which is limiting the number of overs that you can bowl in the first innings. Most of them settled at around about 100 overs. So just four innings of 100 overs each, like a double one-day international. Yes or no?
No, but I sympathise with them. And I'd say it would be interesting to trial it in the Sheffield Shield or something and see what came of it. But I think that there's nothing wrong with a draw, per se, as long as it's a draw that's achieved because the time ran out and it was a thrilling finish. I think they're trying to stop draws where one side scores 700, the other side scores 600, and time runs out that way. So I think I like the way that they're thinking, and I wouldn't mind seeing it trialled, but I can't see it ever taking off.
Yeah, I was quite shocked by that because I don't think there's anything really wrong with a draw, and I think if you did implement those rules, you'd see tests turning into what we see in the middle overs of a one-day international, where the batting team is happy to take 5 runs and over playing the ball through mid-wicket, and the bowling team is happy to let them do that. And I think that if we saw that in Test cricket, it would become extremely tedious very quickly. Another suggestion we got was regarding the Future Tours program. Hasanuddin Kazi wrote in saying, change the Future Tours program so every team has to play at least once every 5 years. Would you like to see us touring Zimbabwe every 5 years, Paul?
Well, look, earlier in the podcast, if you're listening, I said that I don't agree with that. But in a perfect world, yes. In a perfect world, you want to be playing sides as often as possible. I just think the problem is that Test cricket is struggling to sustain that. So I think that we have to go the other way and say we want to play teams as regularly as we possibly can, but not so much that we're doing it just to tick a box, and that in doing so we cheapen the value of the Test series in question.
Shri Imam wrote in saying, have an optional new ball after 60 overs and a mandatory new ball after 70 overs. At the moment, it's after 80 overs and it's always optional. Would you like to see this reduction in new ball time?
Look, I'm not really sure what the reasoning behind that suggestion would be. I think it's okay at the moment with 80, and I think it's okay that sides are allowed to continue bowling beyond that if they think that the old ball is helping them out.
Another suggestion that we had was 8 ball overs. This would be an interesting way to solve over 8s. So you had 8 ball overs with less interruption and more play. This is from Matt Hansen. Back to 8 ball overs, Paul?
It's a good idea, but it's never going to happen. We're all so used to the idea of 6 ball overs. All of the calculations are done through that way, and commercial broadcasters wouldn't want it.
And finally, Mitch's mailbag wrote in, his suggestion was to condense Test cricket down to 1 day, or even 3 to 4 hours, restrict the field placings, make the players wear colours, and only play for 20 overs each.
I like that one. That's the way that potentially the cricket's going, with T20 and one-day cricket taking over it all. But hopefully, some of the suggestions that we've come up with today, if you're listening, David Richardson, or anyone in authority, please feel free to adopt all of these suggestions, and we think that Test cricket will be improved immeasurably as a result. Well, there you have it. That was episode 3 of Bat and Ball with Pat and Paul. If you've got any feedback, send it through. Any further suggestions around Test cricket, or if you want to disagree or agree with anything that we said, you can tweet me at _summer_game.
And I'm available at Patrick Avenel. And congratulations today to New South Wales on winning the Matador Cup.
Indeed. The Premier State, once again, on top. Stay tuned next week for episode 4 of Bat and Ball with Pat and Paul.